we're going to talk about content, media, methods, and learning styles with a question mark. The goal of this video is to get to where you can define what content, media, and methods means, to where you can describe the relationship among those terms. You can list reasons why you might present a concept through multiple media types. So for example, through a picture and a video and a podcast. And just a foreshadowing here, it's not because of learning styles. And then we're going to briefly address media comparison studies and the challenge with that. So let's just get it over with. Learning styles, I'm about to burst your bubble. Learning styles do not exist. It is not true that some people are visual learners, some people are auditory learners. Researchers have tried to prove that many, many times, and they have never been able to prove that. So I know you probably have drilled into your head, I'm a visual learner. That's because you've thought that your whole life. You've been told that. And so you kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You look for examples, but it's not actually true. Okay? I know this is hard to believe because we like to think of everyone as an individual with individual traits. And people do have individual interests and individual capacities. But the way they learn is not different depending on whether it's visual or auditory, etc. The American Psychological Association came out with stuff about this, saying it could actually be detrimental to believe this. They said that teachers kind of spend time and money tailoring lessons to certain learning styles. Times they could be doing other things. Students study in ways that match their perceived learning style, even though that doesn't necessarily help them succeed. And then it perpetuates the myth for the next generation. Other things I've seen on this about why it can be detrimental is that sometimes students, if they think they're a visual learner, if there's some lecture and there's not visuals, they might just turn off and not listen because they figure they're a visual learner. I can't learn this way. And that causes problems and becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Little comic here. This is from a Facebook friend. The reason I'm no good at sports is because I'm an auditory learner, but my teachers insisted on teaching kinesthetically. I'd probably be in the NBA if they just let me listen to tapes of great games. Now, this is kind of an exaggeration, right? We know that's not true. However, it gets to the point that there are some things that you do need to do kinesthetically. And there's some things that you do need to learn visually. It's just that it's what you're learning, not your learning style, that depends on the media. So let's go back let's talk about Robert Kozma. He said there is a difference between media forms, just not the learning style difference. So here's 3 terms you need to be able to understand. The first is content. Content is what students are learning, knowledge, skills, attitudes, what our instruction is aiming to develop. And this can be things like the planets in the solar system, tying a knot, typing, enjoying reading, etc. Media is the form of the content that you presented in for the student. So it could be text, like written text, lecture you tell them about something. It could be a video, picture, computer application. We're getting to where it could be an AI prompt or a demonstration. So these are ways that you take the content and you put them in one of these forms to help your learner understand it. That's media. Finally, method. Method is how instruction is organized. So it can be things like problem-based learning, Gagne's 9 events of instruction, Socratic method, direct instruction. It's those pedagogical approaches that we might use to structure our instruction. Okay. So there was a great media method debate between Richard Clark and Robert Kozma. Richard Clark's position was that the media form doesn't matter, it's the method that matters. So for example, if you were trying to prove that we could have some students use an image and some students use a video, but they were all taught with the same method, there wouldn't be a difference because the method is the same. So basically he's saying we can do whatever media form we want, but the method is what's going to change. Robert Kozma, on the other hand, said media and method work together. They work together to communicate something. And how that works is also dependent on the content. So just quick review these definitions again so you don't forget them. Content is what we're learning. Media is what form that content is, including just text or lecture. And method is the pedagogical approaches and what we're doing. So, according to Clark, media is just the delivery truck. We have some type of content, and the media is just how we deliver that content to the learner, whether we're delivering it in a picture or a video. And what matters is the underlying method of our approach. That's what's going to change what kind of learning happens. Kozma took this idea of a delivery truck and said, but there's some delivery trucks that deliver some things better than others. For example, you might have a refrigerated truck to transport things that are cold. It's going to change the experience, and it's going to change the effectiveness of delivering that content. So he's saying that the media form we choose should match the type of content we're doing. So if we look at, for example, the solar system. This is I just said content of the solar system here. We could have an image or pretend like this is a hands-on diagram. You could use these for different methods. You could use it with problem-based learning. You could put it up during a lecture, different types of approaches. But the question is, does the media form matter? And according to Clark, what's going to matter is what method we use, not the media form. According to Kozma, it is going to matter because we need to make sure we match the content with the media. Content and media should match. So, how is this different from learning styles? You might see here, this is a visual and this is a kinesthetic. The difference is when we're talking about learning styles, we're trying to customize to each student. When we're looking for media and method, we're customizing to the content. We're changing the media form based on what the content we're trying to share is. So, for example, we might be focusing on this type of image to teach about size of the different planets and the relative size of them and understanding what the actual dimensions are. Whereas this type of media might help us understand more the patterns and the rotating patterns of the media. Like I said before, these could really be used with different types of methods, but the type of information they communicate is different. Because of the different forms of media, they have what we call affordances, where this has the affordance of being a stable picture that we can identify the sizes on, and this has the affordance of being able to move it to see the rotations. So the question is, there are some things you can represent in different media forms, and should you change the media form to represent it? Since it's, we're not talking about learning styles, are there times when you really should do something visually and something kinesthetically? And there are reasons to do that. One is to understand something in a different way. So this is the Pythagorean theorem, of course, and we could represent it as a triangle with a formula. This kind of shows if we have a squared, that's a square here, b squared, here's a square here, c squared, there's a square there. That's a different way to represent the same thing, but it helps us think about it in a slightly different way. Or we can look at these number examples. And my favorite is this video. They actually represent it through water. So it's kind of like this one where they have a squared and b squared. Whoops, sorry. But they're actually showing that the water from A and B is the same as C when we combine those two sides. So this is another way to represent the content, to just kind of reinforce it and help you think about it. Okay? Another reason to vary the media and such is actually for repetition. So you might have students do a visual thing. You might have them do a song. You might have them actually be kinetic sand and draw something. And what that does is it allows them to do the same thing multiple times without getting as bored. So it's not about matching their learning style. It's just about the repetition and keeping them engaged. Another reason is actually accessibility. So we might have a video and we might have a transcript so that people who have a harder time listening or following the video because of different disabilities and such, they have that option. Another example is images on the internet actually a lot of the time have what they call alt text or alternative texts. And those are actually things that enable search engines and screen readers to be able to read web pages to others. So there's the picture and then there's this hidden text. So that's a reason to vary. And we're going to skip over here. Okay, media comparison studies. So for a long time, especially in the early days of online learning, they would have a teacher teach a class face-to-face, then they would teach the same class the same way online. And they would use that to say, oh, look, face-to-face is better. However, because we know methods matter so much, we can say, what methods do we use face-to-face and what methods do we use online? Some things might be better face-to-face, some things might be better online. So for example, face-to-face, we might use a diagram like this, but giving online students a picture of a diagram like this isn't going to help. However, there are some things you can do online that are different, and I'm going to show you these really briefly. For example, here's a simulation of the solar system where I can see a lot of information very different from that model. Of course, this is very complicated. It has a lot of details in it that might get a little distracting. So in some cases, you actually might want to use something simpler like this to look at it. Okay? So that's a media form you could use online that's not the exact same as this face-to-face method, but you might use it to actually have them make calculations of things versus this would be more just like exploring. The point is that you can do different things face-to-face than you can do online, and so you shouldn't be comparing these directly because they're different. All right? Okay, so main takeaways. When we are deciding media and method, we need to consider the match between what the content is, the media, and that method. The reasons to use different media forms is to show different aspects of a concept, like that Pythagorean theorem, to have repetition, and to increase accessibility, not because you're customizing learning styles. Thanks for watching.